Yep, we're breaking out the big boy today. The BTO planter. Need to get the big corn planter out, and we got a bit of a log jam here. Great. Now I feel inadequate with my 4-row planter. Someone's always got something bigger than you. We got a few different projects going on at once here. Chris and Jeff are hauling grain. Dad's going to replant a few thin spots in a field that are large. And I'm going to be taking that little 4-row planter and replanting some thin spots that are small. You might actually have a bit of corn left in there. Have to dump it. Oh, I'd say that's plenty, isn't it?
Probably not.
Throw it back in there when we bring up 2 bags, or
one more than that other. It looks even.
There's one more than that. The boss is headed south, and we're going to be headed north. A tale of 2 completely different soil types, which is why the south ground needs the big planter, and the north ground is okay with the small planter. Confused. You mean to tell me that this was not designed with a single cup holder? Whose idea was that? Seems like a reliable spot. Stay there. Just zipping through the countryside with my massive tractor and planter. I would say that we need some front weights on this tractor. Even this little 4-row planter is putting a lot of weight on the back tires. I can feel it hopping. We have arrived. I might as well just start right here and splice in some beans where the 32 bar just ran everything over. It's a highly precise outfit we're running right here. Just gotta accept that you're gonna run over some corn. That's part of life. That spot was overpopulated anyways. If anything, I'm doing a favor. Of course, we didn't do any of our own side dressing, as you guys know at this point. Holding this camera though and trying to steer has made me realize that it'd be very challenging to document side dressing, especially if you're running 7 or 8 miles an hour. This thing only damaged a couple rows at a time, but a 23 knife side dress bar, it'll damage 23 rows at a time. Gosh, are you kidding me? I thought we were done with this. And it's nail side up. It's always nail side up. We're headed to a spot out here where I had to lift up to go around a tile hole. I think I left a bit of a gap. There's our tile hole. I probably need to shovel that open and fix it. And there's our spot. It doesn't really justify going back and forth to replant it, so I may just plant a strip in here sideways and be done. Enjoy this planter. Very simple, mechanically driven, no beeping, no sensors, nothing to worry about, except for the fact that if you don't have any seat in the units, I guess you won't know. And now that I think about it, I never checked that. Fingers crossed. Whew, plenty of seed, probably enough to plant 3 acres a unit. So we got lucky there. Sometimes those sensors aren't a bad thing. They're kind of a double-edged sword. On one side, they give you peace of mind by knowing that you're planting, and on the other side, they don't give you peace of mind because they beep all the time. I'm gonna settle with that 4 rows here through the middle. There's gonna be a gap here and there, but that's better than leaving an empty space. Population out here, yes, all of it. What's the population? Yes, it's planted. Whatever the chain's set to, I have no idea. Everyone, taking a nice deep breath and look at this Beck's 6374 corn we planted about 3 or 4 weeks ago. This may be one of our better looking fields. It's just absolutely beautiful. Hopefully the USDA doesn't see this, because the markets are going to crash if they know our corn looks like this. Not to mention that Acuron GT that we sprayed over the top of this corn about a week ago smoked everything out here. These grasses are still in the process of dying. Can't complain. This field's got some of our highest yield potential right now, just based on looks. Let's get out of here before we find something else to do. We already got a tile hole to fix on our list. Why do birds always poop on the front windshield? Very inconsiderate of them. That was a spot filled in for Andy as a planter operator. Now we're gonna go fix a Marty spot in another field. Almost there. Way out there is a Marty mess up. Not exactly a mess up. He planted around this tile inlet, and I would imagine he just didn't get his planter down or on or something in the right amount of time. Although it looks like he planted, so I'm not really sure what happened here. I get the fun job of going back and forth 4 rows at a time to cover 24 rows over maybe 60 foot. I'm not going to complain. This is a heck of a lot better than replanting it with a hoe. It sure is hard to find good help nowadays. Can't even trust your own family. If I was the one operating the corn planter there, I would have blamed the planter. Totally the planter's fault. But since it's Dad, I'm gonna blame him. This field is just some real light rolling dirt. I'm not surprised that we have some stand issues out here in places. That one spot I was fixing was definitely on the planter, but there's a lot of terrace bottoms out here that were a little heavy when we planted them, and they're thin, so I'm just going out there and knifing some across the rows. We kind of believe in having too much corn in spots like that as opposed to not enough, because there's not enough corn, there's not much competition, and you're putting way too much pressure on your herbicide to keep the weeds down. And trust me, when there is a hole to fill, weeds will find it. The field we were just replanting in is directly adjacent to another one of our cornfields that's actually a very controversial spot right now for our operation. About a week ago, Dad came out here to look at some side dressing progress and noticed that our corn was burnt pretty bad. It has recovered quite a bit since then. We came out here, did a little bit of a scouting report. Of course, the first thing we noticed was that our neighbor's field had been burnt down. We also noticed that they somehow managed to burn a 1/4 mile of our corn. Not kill, listen here, they did not kill our corn, but they certainly tinged the heck out of it all the way up to that far tree line. Not this tree line, the far tree line, about a 1/4 mile from here to there. Of course, we have a few very pressing questions. Obviously, it came off of the neighbor here. It was a co-op who applied it. We know this guy doesn't spray his own stuff, and nothing against him by any means. It's the co-op's problem, or a retailer, whatever you want to call them. It is a co-op in this case. We wanted to know what they sprayed, when they sprayed it, and what were the conditions that day. Met with some agronomists out here. They said, you know, corn's hurt really bad these first couple rows. The rest is probably going to be all right, and even this stuff may survive. They didn't really have any estimation for yield loss or anything, other than these outside rows were hit pretty hard. The rest, probably more cosmetic than physical. There was damage nonetheless. Cooperative manager came out here and met us, showed us their spray sheet. Came out here and sprayed metribuzin, which is probably what burnt the corn. Dole, Fomosafen, which is a PPO, also could have burnt the corn. Roundup, 2,4-D, and of course ammonium sulfate, some other things, surfactants, things of that nature. Interesting mixture of chemicals, by the way. I don't know why you need all those products to burn down a field. I think 2,4-D and Roundup would have been expensive and effective enough to kill these weeds unless it was a timeliness issue, which I don't think it was because they haven't planted the field yet and that was over a week ago. The interesting note was they claimed the wind out of the east that day was 13 miles an hour. I'm not a chemical expert by any means. I'm not going to pretend to be. I know a very general amount of information. I do know that a 13-mile-an-hour wind is not going to carry a quarter of a mile with those herbicides and hurt our corn all the way over there. Looked at the wind speeds that day, and not to our surprise at all, at the day they sprayed this, the time, the high wind speed average was about 17 to 18 miles an hour out of the east, with gusts up to 37 or 38 miles an hour, which is pretty darn impressive. I'm gonna repeat this a million times. I know most of our corn's fine. It's really not a huge issue over there. It's just the principle. Who greenlit the decision to come out here and spray with gusts that high? Even if it wasn't 36, 37, 38 miles an hour gust, why were they spraying if the gusts were anything over 15 or 20? I don't even know if any herbicides are labeled for that high speed. This first pass to herbicide probably was on all our corn. They would have had to have their booms sky high to clear these weeds, get good coverage. Just doesn't make sense all around. That's not even to mention the fact that this same cooperative who sprayed this has burnt our crops 3 years in a row. Different crops, 1 year of soybeans, 1 year of corn. And this is really the icing on top of the cake here, the cherry on top of the sundae. I do empathize with the manager, with the applicators a tiny bit. It's been a wet spring, we're behind schedule, people want things done now. Long story short, I'm gonna run up these outside 4 rows. If I see a spot that's smoked for 4 rows, I'm just gonna replant it and be done with it. I do want the record to note that those last few spots I stitched in some corn were not because of herbicide damage. That was actually just from a little bit too much traffic from the side dress bar. So not all of that was the evils of the co-op. Some of that was just wear and tear from normal farming practices. We're almost home. My replanting journey is done for today. I need to throw this 4-row on the back of the 4520. That'd be a fun experience. It's raining. I can't decide if that's good timing or bad timing. It's good because I finished replanting what I wanted to. It's bad because I have to walk to my truck. You know what? This is the perfect excuse to take a lunchtime nap. Or, as the Spaniards call it, a siesta. Oh, that was one heck of a nap, you guys. You ever just close your eyes and next thing you know, it's 24 hours later? That's the definition of a siesta. Or maybe a sleeping beauty type slumber. Although I didn't get any more beautiful last time I checked. No, still same old me. I think it's about time that I make a confession to you guys. We picked up a new piece of equipment recently. We've kind of been hiding it because we don't want you guys to see it. We didn't want the neighbors to see it. We didn't want them to be jealous, you know, and think we're making just money hand over fist, because that's not the case. It's tucked away back here in our older shed, along with a few other things. Ah, there's our fancy upgrade right there. A little 1-row garden planter. Yeah, I know what you're all thinking. We're just loaded, spoiled farm boys out here in God's country. In all reality, that's not the case. It was hard enough getting the bank to finance the money we needed to pay for this. But what is your farming operation if it's not paid for 1 month at a time? Some very high quality aluminum and cheap plastic parts. No idea if it's even assembled right, because it didn't come with instructions. This bar on the back, who knows what it does? That just looks like a good place for it. Best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. My mom and dad have a concerning amount of empty Folgers containers at their house. I don't know if it's the hoarding that scares me or the quantity of coffee they had to drink to collect all these containers. We've got our high-dollar replanting outfit loaded up. Let's go fix some Marty mistakes. I believe somewhere out here a row of the corn planter was not planting. Somewhere. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, there it is, right there. You gotta be smarter than the tool, Andy. Come on. Get a college degree, they said. It'll make you better at things, they said. That was a lie. I'm doing all this extra work to save myself. I'm doing extra work. This light dirt needs some rain. It always seems to be a day away from a drought, a day away from a flood at the same time. How is that possible? I don't know. Take that up with God. This looked like a lot less distance from the road. Very regulated population. Just testing my patience. I don't understand how something can be so soft yet so hard at the same time. Actually, never mind. Don't even try to answer that and forget that I just said that. There's less seed in the planter and not very much seed showing on the top of the ground. So there's really no arguing whether or not the planter did something. This is actually John Deere's next evolution in planters. Last they brought you the exact emerge planter. This is the debatable emergence planter. Buy it while you can because prices are going up 15% this year. On to the next project. We're out in one of the last fields of soybeans that we planted. This is a field of Pioneer 32T26 enlist soybeans. There's some lighter areas out in this farm. It had some challenging harvest conditions and tillage conditions last fall and winter essentially. So I want to come out here, especially on the light dirt, and make sure that we have an adequate stand. I also happen to be conveniently located right now directly next to Interstate 57, so I'd like to think that no one is going to call the cops on the deranged madman carrying a camera out in the middle of the field. Stranger things have probably happened. I typically prefer to pick one of the worst looking areas because if the worst looking area meets your expectations, then the rest of the field's gonna be fine. So kind of thin in here, mark your spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 17 and a half feet. And now we just gotta count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 51, 52, 53. 53 times 2 is 106,000 plants per acre. We'll look at the other side and see what it's at. 162, 63, 64. 64,000 times 2 is 128,000 plants per acre. If that's thin, well, then I'm basically a Victoria's Secret supermodel. And I'm not that. So we better raise our standards a little bit because the worst spots in this field actually look phenomenal. It's also worth mentioning that we still have a lot of seeds working their way up out of the ground, fighting residue from the last corn crop. I'd say that when it's all said and done, we're gonna have probably as close to an ideal stand out here as we could have hoped for. We've been doing replanting, odds and ends, a few other jobs, and Chris and Jeff have been hauling grain. See, it's pretty much stopped running right there in the middle. Side sumps right through there are pulling grain out as we speak. Once those quit, we can fire up the power sweep, which is powered by the out-auger motor, and it'll start cleaning out. One last hurrah for the day. We're going to check in on all of our soybeans that we decimated in the process of replanting our field. Comes my favorite part of the journey. Woo! That's not even really a steep hill at all, but gotta make the most out of what I can during the day. It's not always that exciting out here in flat farmland country. Before we look at this, I want to note I have zero expectations to see any soybeans out of the ground unless they were miraculously left on top of the soil and somehow have germinated, which seems nearly impossible because we haven't had any rain. That's also the reason I don't expect to see very many, because I put them a little bit deeper than normal, so it may take them an extra day or two to come out of the ground. What we can see though at this point are what soybeans I killed and what soybeans are fine. At first glance, I would say that we did minimal damage at best. A lot of green beans out here. If I'd cut them off, they'd be dead by now. If I'd run them over, I think they would have decided to die by now. And for the most part, a lot of the beans are out here. That's why we came at that 3 or 4 degree angle as opposed to running down the row. We reduce the amount of time we spend on each row. We make use of all the unplanted area in the middle. We reserve that population that we'd already established that has higher earlier season yield potential, and wherever it's thin, our hope is that the other beans come up, canopy, shade out weeds, and produce as much soybeans as possible. And in areas where we have that pre-established stand, our hope is that the big beans, if they can fill the area they need to, maybe they'll shade out the ones I replanted, and the replant ones in that area will die off to prevent overpopulation. Full disclosure, that's like a perfect scenario interpretation of what I'd like to happen. In all reality, we probably will have a few spots out here that have too many beans. Here's a perfect spot to look. Coulter row unit went right through there. We knocked one over. He's still green, which makes me think that he's going to survive. Jury's probably still out on that one. This one right here, we ran it over, we broke it, it's already dead. For the most part though, we definitely spared more than we eliminated, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. Soybeans are just vigorous little buggers out here. I mean, they will fight and fight. You can run them over. You can even cut some of them off, and they will somehow manage to survive. Let's take a look and see what our soybeans are doing down here. Nice fluffy soil. Remember, we planted them at 100,000, so we are going to have a harder time finding them. My guess is that we've probably started germination and emergence, but we're just barely in that process. There's one right there. And as I said, we're putting on that little root to start. These things will be out of the ground in less than 4 or 5 days, if I had to guess. Acquiring a new farm, whether through ownership, tenancy, or whatever arrangement you guys use, is always an interesting proposition, because it's kind of like entering a new frontier. Although we are familiar with this kind of ground, we're not familiar with this field exactly and how the previous tenant or owner managed it. And it's something that we have to keep a very keen eye on moving forward. I will keep you guys posted, because I do think it's a rather fascinating process, having to make decisions on the fly as you adjust to new properties. That being said, I think that's more than enough farming for one video. I do greatly appreciate all of you tuning in. Make sure you head over to farmfocus.com, check out the channel merchandise. I am greatly appreciative of all of your guys' continued support. That's gonna be it though. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you wanna see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!